How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, great discussion coming our way. We are going to be talking about report writing. I've done a few episodes on this in the past, but when I looked at the videos, they're a little older. I think the knowledge is still good. Some of those videos are actually used for training all across the country, but I want to revisit it, and I want to bring some more perspectives in. So I'm going to have myself on. We're going to have Russ, of course. We're also going to have Jonathan Bates. We're going to introduce you to him, and we're going to introduce you to Jake Welder. That's what we call him. I'm not going to tell you what his real name is, but we call him Jake Welder. But, guys, it's going to be a great discussion. We're going to try to do our best to try to give you some really good advice that will help you create really good reports, because obviously we know how important report writing is. And then towards the end, if you guys stay towards the end, we're going to ask a question I don't think has ever been asked before, but if you guys are still rocking those old log books and you got to kind of take notes in the log books, I mean, what do we put in the log books? What are we saving for reports? I mean, I was never taught that, so I thought we can kind of share in on that discussion. I think that would be pretty cool. Hey, guys, if you get a chance, don't forget, Inmate Manipulation Decoded is on the market. It's available on Amazon. Link to that is in the description. This book does very well. Thank you guys for always showing support on this book. We were in Amazon's top 50 in law enforcement books this week, which was pretty good. And again, guys, books used for training. So if you guys are in a trainer's position, definitely get this book. We also have How to Succeed in Corrections, Lessons Learned While Working in a Prison. This book is published by Blue 360 Media. It's out in the market right now. Guys, this book just got tons of tips and advice, not just for myself, but other people in the profession. So if you guys get a chance, I would get this book, partner with this book. Hold on. And then I thought it was coming out the 20th of February, but I'm told that's actually coming out on the 29th of February. But we also have this book. This is just a printed thing that I printed out from the computer. But this book comes out, the 29th, this Wednesday. And it is also published by Blue 360 Media. It's called Tips for New Correctional Officers and Their Supervisors. But I think it's got advice that could be used just for anybody who's working in corrections. It's going to partner well with these two books right here. So you're starting to get this whole collection of just books and knowledge, good insight and advice. And I'm also working on my daily reader. I started about maybe 15 or 20 days into the new year, but I'm slowly catching up. I commit to a passage a day, and I'm on February, I think, 16th or 17th. And again, just some more insights, some more tips. I'm really going to focus on leadership tips here, not leadership tits, leadership tits. Talked a little too, no, leadership tips, talking too quick. I'm going to be focusing on leadership tips, TIPS. And, there'll be some regular generalized advice for also the tactical side as well. But I think that this is harder to write because it's going to be 365 tips, but I think it's going to have really good application. All right, let me get Russ Hamilton on. Russ!
Hey, Anthony, and your Freudian slips. So
yeah, what happened there, huh?
Yeah, well, I think we know what happened. Your head was going, well, never mind. We'll keep this family friendly. But so anyway, great to be here in the studio.
Great to have you, Russ. You mind introducing yourself to our audience, please?
So my name's Russ Hamilton. I'm a former and retired sergeant with California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. I've also worked as a senior juvenile correctional officer. I currently work for a private company where we do reentry and rehabilitation work for a local county jail where I'm a case manager and a local probation department.
And Russ, how's Keepers of Chaos?
So Keepers of Chaos is everything that has to do with actually the profession itself and being a professional and the needs of professionals. That includes everything, from training and history, content knowledge, and sometimes war stories. So that's what we've got going on Facebook on Keepers of Chaos with a K. And if you are in the business, at any level, everyone's welcome. Obviously, we focus mostly on the custody aspect. But if you're a teacher, if you're a medical person, if you're a cook, whatever it is, come on by and check it all out. We've got a lot of great people there, the best in the business, because like I say, we focus on actually doing the part about being a professional in corrections.
Yeah, guys, and there's great mentors on that site. I mean, people that actually build relationships that travel off the Facebook page, which is pretty cool. So if you guys are not a member of social media, I understand, but this may be a good opportunity for you to develop a fake account and do what Russ does. Russ got like 50 of them. Develop a fake account, and then we'll figure out a way to.
That's because Zuckercut bans me. So,
well, we have ways of finding out who you guys really are. So don't worry. You can develop a fake account, and then we'll figure it out. Russ does it all the time. I even had a rookie email me and wanted me to tell you, Russ, that he's very proud of you. And if you ever need anything, he's got your back.
Oh, awesome. Awesome.
All right, let me get John on. Hold on one second. John, what's up, man?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. So, guys, we're going to meet John and Jake today. First time on my channel. I had a chance to do a show with them on their podcast called Hard Times, which gets released Monday. It was a great dialogue, crossed into a lot of stuff about leadership, but definitely providing frontline perspective, administrative perspective. It was a really good dialogue. So I thought that we can kind of start maybe cross-promoting. I had some fun here, and I thought maybe we could start having them on and providing a lot of insight, because in the process of our discussion, I took a lot from them. They took a little bit from me, and I thought maybe I can introduce them to my audience as well. So, John, do you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, my name is Jonathan Bates. I was a correctional officer for about 5 years. I became a field training officer. Then I was a sergeant for about a year and a half. I was only a sergeant for a year and a half because I had actually decided to leave corrections, but I wanted to be all I could be before I left. So I was a sergeant for about a year and a half. And then I became a 911 operator, which I've been doing ever since, which is a totally different discipline. But since then, I have also become a consummate podcaster. I appear on a bunch of shows, and I was interviewed about my correctional experience on a podcast called On Being a Police Officer, and it kind of got my juices flowing. And I remembered being a correctional officer all those years ago. It's a job that's constantly misunderstood. What little people know about it is usually wrong, or it's misinformation, or it's bad information. I think it's a noble profession. We have a lot of professionals doing the job, and they live under sort of a shadow of darkness or mystery about their job. So I started the Hard Time podcast with Jake, where we talk about everything going on in the news and what happens with him. He's an active sergeant in the field, but I'll let him introduce himself.
And by the way, that's kind of runs parallel why we did it. At first, it was more about letting the profession know, letting people from the outside know what we do in this profession. This was going back 2012. I think we started Tier Talk on the radio platform, but then eventually it was more about inwards, what we could do to better ourselves, because at the end of the day, even if the public believes that we're doing something great, we weren't getting the positivity from inside the profession. So there was a bit of a conflict there. All right, let me get Jake Welder, aka Jake Welder, I guess. Hold on. Jake, what's up, man?
Jake has another name we won't refer to him by, so that's why he keeps tripping everyone up. Jake, how are you?
And he's got the sunglasses, the beard, the hat. Hey, Jake, you might well, I don't know. Can you introduce yourself at all?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Jake Welder. I'm known as the Profane One. We won't use my full moniker on this platform. I'm the co-host of Hard Time, active sergeant in the Southwest United States. I work mostly with in a juvenile facility, but we have multiple facilities. So I've worked maximum corrections before. I've worked in the maximum units. And also we have a alternative sentencing unit that I'm going to be working in here pretty soon. So been an active sergeant for 3.5 years, and I was active for 5 years as a corrections officer before that. So 8.5 years now experience coming up. I'll be coming up on my 9th anniversary here soon. So just full-time dad and sergeant, part-time podcaster.
Nice. And thank you guys for coming on. Thank everyone for their service today. So guys, this is going to be a quick little discussion. Just wanted to kind of get some more insight into report writing, because obviously we know report writing is key in corrections, because again, that's the liability side, and reports are checked at every level. I mean, that's how important it is. So obviously from the people that write it, all the way to the supervisors who oversee those individuals, all the way up to administration, and then eventually could make it all its way to the courts. It really does start at the simplest of levels, the lowest of levels, but can travel all the way up into areas that are very unknown to us, right? The court system. But with that said, Russ, let's just start this first. Russ, I'll start with you, Russ. You start writing a report. In your mind, where is that report could wind up going?
Well, the first place that you got to worry about it ending up, of course, is IA. But having said that, it could go to court. The thing that I always concentrate on, though, is I know it could end up in those places. But primarily, what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to secure that local, internal conviction. And so the important part of that really is usually focusing on the elements of the crime that you're charging them with, and proving that those elements occurred in order to get the conviction. And then anything outside of that really has more to do with whether or not that particular crime or misbehavior or whatever is perhaps going to be referred to the district attorney. And so then there's, of course, beyond that, there might be some other things that you want to add in addition to that.
Yeah, and guys, by the way, when you're writing a report, you're not writing a report to impress. You're just stating the facts. I used to hate individuals that would love to take a report and showcase the verbiage that they're able to utilize. And it's like, hey, listen, if I can't understand that, and I work in the profession, what makes you think that someone from the outside looking in can understand that profession? And that goes into, maybe I can ask John that question. John, when you're writing those reports, I mean, you do have to prepare to write a report that may not always be seen by people who actually work in the profession, correct?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what Russ was talking about. When you write a report, first of all, if you are writing a report serious enough to involve criminal charges, you have to make sure that this is ready to be seen by anyone between you all the way up to the Supreme Court, because you just never know. And you have to remember, you're going to be called to the stand. You're going to be talking about your report. You could be cross-examined based on the matters of fact that you put in that report. How is a judge going to treat what you wrote? Is it going to be admissible? Is it going to be considered a good report? How will the state's attorney view you? Is there someone where you're going to help make the case? Will the defense attorney be able to eviscerate you based on something you said? But most importantly, how is the jury going to view you? As a correctional officer, particularly if you're appearing in court with a uniform on, depending on the circumstances of the case, there could be some sort of bias against you. It could be some sort of unspoken bias against police officers that maybe somebody has. You have to make sure that you're representing yourself very well and very professionally. And your word is your bond, and that's on paper, and you have to be able to stand by that report. So someone like me, I like to have fun at work. If it was ever just a minor write-up, like every once in a while, I would throw in something there. The famous line in a report is, "I escorted the inmate to the floor." Because we have to describe the way that we use force appropriately in our reports. But just remember that you're committing to stand by what actions you took in that moment. You're professional in that moment. So continue to be professional throughout the rest of the process, and that goes in your reports. And if that's something that you're struggling with, don't submit a bad report. Like I said, this is important. Partner with your sergeant, partner with fellow officers. If there's someone that you have that's a mentor, a corporal, or someone that's very good at that, field training officer, make sure you're getting that right. But there's elements of a good report, right? You can't just shoot from the hip and say, well, this is what a good report is, and this is what a good report isn't. There are different elements of it, like what Russ alluded to, making sure all the elements of a crime are in place. If you're going to describe a crime that's taking place, something you would want to put in there is making sure that it was clear that there was criminal intent, that what happened was not an accident. So it can be very difficult to write a report, and some people excel at it and others don't.
He touched on something that I always tell my people, especially when I was a sergeant, more so when I was a sergeant. I mean, now that I'm the administrative end, my job really is to review what's coming our way to make sure it's all pretty. I mean, that's always going to be the goal, for us in administration, because remember, we're the ones that have to take those packets and also pass it up. So we're trying to make sure that everything's kind of flowing. But he mentioned that the reports are a reflection of our professionalism. And I agree with that 100%. I kind of paraphrased a little bit, but basically, yeah, reports are a reflection of our professionalism. So Jake, you're a sergeant as well, but in your experience, how do reports equate to professionalism and how we're seen?
Well, a lot of times I feel like I tell people all the time, like looking over reports, it's kind of like you're on Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader, trying to go over the basic grammar and spelling and punctuation, those types of things, to make sure that what I'm sending up to administration and could go to the state does look professional, that it makes sense, that there's nothing that's just hanging on the end of a sentence, or there isn't a result to it. Those type of essential elements, making sure that all of that's there. And it looks professional. It looks like a court document. We see court documents all the time. I'm probably a little more concerned than most for reports. If those reports regularly go to probation and the courts, the judges see them almost weekly for the juvenile justice system here where I'm at. So these reports are getting either relayed by a sergeant or sometimes read, whether that's in meetings or in open court. So those types of things are extremely important, that once you have everything there, you want to make sure that everything makes sense, and that if they're, often you have to quote profane things, but like if the profanity isn't necessary to the report, take that out, so that everything looks professional and polished when it goes up to the next level, because they definitely will kick it back down if there's issues.
Yeah, and I want to mention something too that's important, guys. When you go to court and you're on the stand, especially when you're on the management side, let's say, and they're reading you some reports from your officers or from your staff that really are not fluid, the verbiage is just really badly written, that's an embarrassing moment. That's a systematic problem, because look at how many levels that report had to go through, and to make it to that level looking that sloppy is the most embarrassing thing that you could witness as prison management, because you're responsible ultimately for what's being passed up. And to be honest with you, when you have that many filters, that many people that should be invested in at each level for a report not to be pristine, I mean, I get it, man. Inmates develop loopholes, lawyers develop loopholes. I'm not saying we're going to win every case, but if you got these reports that look like crap, that make no sense, where it makes it all the way to the courts and the inmate's number's wrong or their name is wrong, and then you're sitting there and it's like, holy crap, this went through so many levels from the officer, let's say in this case here, the trajectory, officer, sergeant, lieutenant, captain or majors, the different levels of admin. And guys, also, let's not forget the higher executive staff and their legal team. And all of a sudden, you're up at the witness stand, and they say, hey, you got John Smith, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is John Smith, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. It's like, oh, and don't think it doesn't happen, because it does. But Russ, I saw you agreeing a lot with what Jake and John were saying. What's your thoughts on just that reflection of professionalism on reports?
Yeah, if it sounds bad and if it's not clear, and that gets passed out to a jury or whatever, your chances of actually getting a conviction out of that are diminished. And I'm not going to say it's going to that's going to be a make or break, because they can always bring you to the stand. There can be other witnesses. There might be other reports. But you know what? Well, if we start putting, too much of a little bit of a question mark in the jurors' heads, they're just that less likely to maybe go for it. Especially if the case is complex, especially if the case has some contradictory evidence being put in there, and there will be that, because that's what defending attorneys get paid to do, right? Defending attorneys get paid to tear you and everyone else down on the spot, right? It's up to the prosecuting attorney to come back and rehabilitate you, after you've testified. So the more things that we're able to bring to bear that are all jiving and that are all sounding professional and that are looking good, also the less it's less likely that you actually end up having to testify in court, because the guy feels like, hey, there's no chance at this. We're just going to take whatever deal's offered. So I hope that answered it.
No, it does. And guys, also, professionalism is a reflection of your credibility. I mean, think about this. We work on the correction side, right? So pretty much we have to be hyper vigilant. And all of a sudden, you get a concern on a report that is very surface in nature, that is not picked up at all these different fail-safes. and makes it to the court, it's embarrassing because right off the bat, the credibility is destroyed. I would like to think when you go into court, again, because we're assuming that's where all these reports could go to. So we have to assume at the highest of levels when we write something that this is where the reports could go, that you're going in with a level of credibility connected to your level of professionalism. And like Russ is saying, when you have someone that's challenged you in court and they know that they're going to lose, but they're going to give it a shot anyway because they have nothing else to do, they challenge due process. That's what they do. And that's when our due process has to be on point as best we can, which includes something as simple as a name and a number. So having said that, when you don't make the effort at the most simplest of levels, I will tell you one thing. As it starts to travel up, the more basic stuff is going to get overlooked. When you move reports higher in the chain, the administrative side, we may deal with the collection of everything, the generalized reports. We may not look at all the officers' reports. We may look at the supervisors' reports. I mean, as you move up, things become a little bit more general in nature. That's why you got to have those people on that ground floor looking for those basics, because we look at how those basics connect. So it's crazy where we're all together. We think we push something up, but when something's being challenged in the lawsuits or something's being sued, whatever, the liability side, they start to scrutinize the basics because that's where the due process errors could be. So what happens is you're getting ready to defend this case because we look good as a house and, we're standing tall together, and all of a sudden they hit you something. They hit you with something that's so individualized and so simple in the basics that it's enough to open up a whole can of worms. I see you nodding your head in agreement, John. What's your thoughts on that?
If you're gonna write a report in the first place, and like you said, sometimes it's very frustrating because inmates will be, doing this because they can. They have a lack of anything other than to pursue their due process. It can be very frustrating. But you need to be motivated when you write a report and just say, what's the purpose of writing this at all? If you're going to write a bad report or an inaccurate report, you may as well not even write one. If an incident is serious enough where you're writing a report, make sure you're getting everything correct. I think that you're spot on when you say the higher that reports go, the more they focus on the substance of the report and less on the content. When you get very high up and you're reading a lot of people's reports, particularly on an incident, and they all tend to jibe, you're going to just say, you're going to look at a collection of like 6 reports and like, okay, everybody was there. Everyone saw the same thing. There's some discrepancies here or whatever that you're going to get in every report. But you really do need to be your first fail safe, right? I, as a sergeant, when I'm getting 6 reports and I'm putting them into a use of force packet, I'll glance over that, but I've got my own report to write. I've got all those other documents to worry about. I've got other people that I've got to notify. And as a sergeant, I want to be able to trust my officers. I want to be able to say, Officer so-and-so, I trust them to write a good report. Now, there's plenty of officers that just don't have that as a skill, and it doesn't mean that you're a bad correctional officer. In fact, some of the smartest people that I know just don't express themselves very well in written form. And when you write a report, it's not the same thing as like writing a letter about how your day was or sending an email to someone else. Like I said, it's a completely different format. So if you're someone who is a good correctional officer and you want to see your work helping prosecutors or helping the administrative process to deal with inmates, if you want to be engaged in your process, it starts with report writing. So make sure that you're doing that well. If it's not something that's a strength for you, there's resources that you can go to, but make sure that you're taking partnerships. Make sure you're figuring it out and getting those basic elements. Make sure you're getting the day of the week correct, the time correct. I always wore a watch. I was a correctional officer so long ago that people generally didn't carry phones all the time, but I wore a watch. And when something would happen, when we had an incident go off, I would look at my watch first thing, saying, just so I know when I'm writing this report later. I had that mentality that everything that I needed to do that was important was going to go in a report. I said at 7:14, that's when all this started. And so I would get my facts straight. I would try to be all about those facts and getting that done. If I had confusion or anything, sometimes I would try to take a break maybe from the report because you'd spend so much time writing reports and something will come back to you more clear later. But just remember that it's very, very important. And the most important thing, like I said, you write that report, you're committed to it. Once it's a document in front of the court, you're going to live and die by that report. You either have to be willing to stand by it personally, or you're going to be able to have to take a huge black eye when you say something on there is wrong. And that can come down to even something as minor as a case of mistaken identity over an inmate number, because like you said, those defense attorneys are there to just parse reasonable doubt out of anything.
Yeah, and it's also it's embarrassing because as I said, when you're looking from the outside in, and so well spoken on that, John, too, as well, is when you're looking from the outside in, they may not understand why that basic was missed at so many levels, and that really does become it's tough to gain your credibility on that again, because they expect us to at least be able to handle those simplistic basics. And then now what happens is when you're trying to defend your case, instead of you giving reasons, you're just giving excuses, and it's just, you start to lose the credibility of it all. Hey, Russ, before we go to Jake, Russ, you said, I saw you raise your hand on something that John said.
Yeah, just what Jonathan was saying there is spot on. One of the things that I used to call this striking the loopholes, right? And that means that you go back, through your report, and you start finding the potential loopholes and identifying them, and then, revising your report. And I think like one of the really good examples of this is when we talk about, how did we identify that inmate? How do we know who he was? And that might sound really simple, but if you include it in your report, hey, this was inmate Smith. He was identified by his state identification card. He was identified by the fact I asked him who he was, and the fact that he cited his number back to me, and by my prior contact with that individual. What we've done is we've closed one particular loophole that might be looked at in court. Because if you don't include certain things in your report, simply like identification, then you get questioned about that. And the more things that you get questioned about, the more chances there are that they could trip you up. Now, you might have a great answer for why you didn't include that on your report or how you made the identification, but why not put that out there ahead of time and put one more headache on that defense attorney so that he knows that, hey, man, there are no loopholes for me to go to in this report. I wish we didn't even have this guy on the stand, but prosecution's going to call him. So maybe we make the deal. And so that's just one good example of how you can do strike throughs on your loopholes.
So Jake, a lot of stuff here talking about, making sure we try to avoid those mistakes, the credibility. Anything you would like to unwrap that was just said before we start giving out those tips and advice?
I just think, personally, I would make sure that I would want to make sure that they're taking exhaustive notes while they're working. That was something that I did. John said making note at the time. I make jokes all the time about my Palm Pilot, which is a misnomer because I write things on the backside of my hand as reminders. Somebody's initials, a time, whatever, something that I can refer back to when I'm later able to sit down before a computer and do a report or write something out. Our officers, they have to be relieved or something to be able to do these reports. So trying to go through everything by memory. It's good to have as much information as possible as you can, be as detailed as possible. But like you said, you've got to strike a balance there, because you want to make sure that you don't want to give them more extraneous stuff that they can start picking apart. So I think those were all good tips.
Yeah, and now what I want to do is now really start on some tips for the body of the report, and I want to go beyond the what, where, when, how. I really want to dive into deep as why we're including that and what type of verbiage can be used, because obviously the basics are going to be, I was always taught, like we're all in agreement here, you got to be specific, right? When did it happen? What happened? Who was involved? How did it happen? And they'll always tell you this: avoid the why. I'm going to just fix something on that, because that's been taken very generally. If two inmates got into a fight, avoid the why in your report. Let that be discovered. And a lot of people have taken that and generalized that out as to avoid the why altogether. No, when it comes to the why of what you did, or how you may feel, because that could justify a use of force, you are supposed to put that in. I've actually had people tell me, Gangi, we don't put whys in our report. I said, no, whys related to why an inmate may have done something. I get it. You're not going to put a Y in that because you don't know technically. Let that all be figured out. But you should, in your operations report, not the charge, but the operations report, yes, build your justification for the actions that you take. It's crazy how people generalize that out and thought that you do not write the why. It's like you write the why based on why you did something. And again, guys, just so you know, the charge and the report are slightly different. The report will support the charge. So the report you could put a little more into, but the charge is pretty much the noted violations and the actions that led to it, who was involved, whatever. But maybe we'll start off there. Let's just do that. So we'll go around on this one. So Russ, let's talk about first the difference between the actual report and the charge that you're writing, because they should be two separate things. The report will support the charge. So what's the basics for the charge and what's the basics for the report first? We'll do that argument first.
Okay, so most places, they have like in California, for instance, it's Title 15, and those are all the things basically that an inmate is not allowed to do. Now, those are covered both by Title 15 itself and the penal code secondarily, from our point of view. Now, if it makes it to court, of course, they're only going to look at what occurs in the penal code. So when we look at any specific charge, and we look at it through the eyes of, and it doesn't matter whether it's the penal code, it doesn't matter whether it's just Title 15, and I'll use that interchangeably, but every place has something like a Title 15 or an operations manual or an inmate disciplinary manual. And so when we look at that, those are the things that they can be charged with. When we go back to our report and we actually start writing that, we have to be in a position where the elements of the crime that we're putting into the report will actually support what's going on there. Maybe as an example, take if we were trying to charge an inmate with escape, right? There has to be some planning that goes on to that. There has to be an indication that that's actually what the inmate was trying to do. It might be something that's not quite clear. Maybe he was hiding out in an area, but do we know for sure that he was escaping? Maybe we can make it stick. Maybe we can't, probably up to someone else. But what we want to be sure to bolster and put in there are all the things that can also put him into a position where he can be charged with, at least at the lower disciplinary level, maybe not in the court or whatever, with things like maybe preparation to escape. Maybe we can get him with being out of bounds. And these are generally what we refer to as lesser included offenses. They have to be part of the crime, the main crime, which is the escape. But if the escape isn't provable, they can still be a crime or a disciplinary all on their own.
Hey, Russ, that's a good point you made, and I want to make sure that's heard again. So we are going for the highest level. You may not have all the information in place to say it's actual escape, but I'm going to go ahead and write them and let them decide where that lands. Is that what you're getting at, Russ? The highest level?
Yeah. To some degree that happens. To some degree, at least with an officer like I was, and a sergeant is I'll try and figure out what the best thing I can get out of it is. If I don't have time or they don't want to do maybe a full-fledged investigation on it, I may still try and make it stick. But the thing I always do is I always make sure that I put everything I can into the report, kitchen sink and all, so that I have a chance at least making a lesser included offense stick. And so that's just kind of the way that I've operated through the years, and always made sure that I put that in there, because you're going to have to support those elements of the crime through the lesser included offenses in order to make the big ones stick, because all of those things have to be part of the body of the big crime. The charge is just what you tend to see either in the inmate disciplinary guide, or excuse me, or state law in the penal code, what have you. And those are just things that identify what the crime is and how the crime is established through meeting all of the elements of that crime. And if you read the penal code, you'll see how they do that. They will tell you what the definition of murder one is. They will tell you what the definition of murder two is. They will tell you what the definition of manslaughter is, and so on. And that tends to be pretty much reflected as well in what people use in their inmate disciplinary reports. The things that actually go into the report, though, or at least this is the way I would do it, is I started with an introductory paragraph that says that, inmate such and such at such and such a time committed the act of battery on inmate Jones or whatever, right? And I don't put any specifics in there. And then after I'm done with that summary paragraph, then I start putting the specifics about when I was made aware of it, what happened, what I saw, the circumstances surrounding it, and the actions that I took.
That makes 100% sense. I like that because it automatically, on the report side, it brings you right into what you're responding to, and then it goes and breaks down pretty much what happened step by step. And as I said, for the charge, that's the one that really matters. That's where we do actually, okay, the person violated, whatever this code is, whatever the number is, this is what it is. And then quickly the action that violated. Sometimes what happens here is you'll have people that will write the charge, write a report, and they conflict with each other because they put too much into the charge. The charge is quickly, this is the charge that was violated. This is what they did. Everything else goes into the report. They wind up, I've seen a lot of people actually pretty much, it could go both ways. Copy what they have on the charge, make that their report, or copy what they have on the report and make that their charge. And that act of convenience is not good. What's your thoughts on all this, Sean? Because I see you in agreement for some.
Well, when you're taking a look at a charge, you're deciding what it is that you're going to write them up with, whether it's a violation of state statute in the penal code or whether it's an institutional rule. You're essentially defining the problem. But how did you arrive at this? Well, I mean, the report's essentially going to explain what your interaction was that led you to write the report in the first place. That you entered the cell, that you discovered a weapon, that you took actions in accordance with such and such policy or whatever. But something else to remember too when you're writing reports, it's not just the charges that you're dealing with the inmate or the violation of the rule, but this is where it gets really sticky with reports. Is anytime where your actions might be called into question, this is where you're going to be putting in verbiage that describes what you're allowed to do as an officer, what's in your use of force policy. For example, like suppose you had to write a report that explained why you used potentially lethal force. You would have to explain that the reason for you making that decision was that you were trying to prevent the commission of a felony. But you have to go beyond that to protect yourself adequately, because anytime where you're looking at a report and you've had to do something significant like that, the totality of the circumstances that inform your decision making could also be called into question in court. What would a reasonable officer in your position do? What was it based on your prior knowledge and your prior experience that led you to take this action? And this is a lot of times where officers can get stuck off in the weeds when they took action that they can't justify on paper. And that's where really knowing the rules, the state statutes, what you're allowed to do as a correctional officer, and hopefully your behavior was justifiable. But there it goes right into the initial report. And if you've done something serious, like if you had to use force that resulted in the death of an inmate, there's obviously going to be a lot of follow-up investigation into that. But your initial report, again, is something that you're going to live and die by. And you have to make sure that that's correct going into it. And to your point about copying and pasting, I've seen a lot of officers who will sit together after they've done a report, and one of them is really bad at writing reports, and they sit there and copy off of each other's papers. A defense attorney is also going to love that too, because he's going to think that all the officers got together and got their stories straight, or are copying each other's homework, and it's a bad look.
Yeah, what's funny is old school people would say, the sergeant would say, put everybody in the same room and work on the reports together. And technically, as we've evolved, that's not the right thing to do, because when the reports seem to be identical, that's the first thing that these lawyers look at, because they feel at that point it was planned. Believe it or not, as long as they don't break away from the integrity, you expect little break-offs, as long as you're not violating the integrity. And the other thing you mentioned too, John, is verbiage matters too, because if you use verbiage that connects to the policies and procedures, it aligns you with them. So they know that, hey, this person does know his job. Like in our state, we have attorney guidelines for the use of forces that have specific verbiage in how we react in our using of use of force. So passive aggressive, whatever it is. So when you use those terms, those terms will let people know they're familiar with the policies, what everybody agrees with. And at this point here, they were able to use the force because the guideline specifically says that this person, this type of force could be used if this inmate is deemed to be this level of aggressive, whatever it is, active threat, and whatever the cases are. So knowing that verbiage is spot on, and then finding a way to translate that verbiage onto your reports.
You basically want to be the person who's the embodiment of the policy, saying this is the policy and this is how I embodied that policy. This is how the policy was applied through my actions. This facility, this institution has guidelines for what behavior is acceptable and how officers should do their job. And this is how I acted in accordance with that. You should show yourself applying what it is that you've been expected to do as an officer.
I see you were going to say something, Russ, before we go to Jake. What was that, Russ? You had something?
Oh, I mean, as I'm thinking about what Jonathan is saying there, I'm thinking back on, things that happened to me over the years. Yeah, it's really important to be able to articulate the reasons the reasons for the actions that you took. And many times, it's dependent on, what your thought process is at the time. I think it was the very last use of force that I had in my whole career, as a matter of fact, was a guy that was, high as he could be on spice. And we had already doused him with like a couple of cans of MK9. And he came at me, and I did a block strike on him with my baton. And we ended up in this big pile. And just to give you an idea, he was clearly trying to reach, for his belt line. And so I threaded his arm with the baton and managed to, wrench it back. And I included all of that in my report, in order to be able to justify what I was doing to twist his arm up at that angle, because I believed that he could be reaching for a weapon, or I believed that he could be reaching for the dope to try and get rid of it and swallow it, which also would have, presented, potentially a medical issue, and went through all of that list, that linear thinking that I was going through in order to justify what I had done at that moment in time. And so it's really important.
Jury needs to see that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it gives you, and it touches on that, what Anthony was talking about before, on that whole why thing, that process that happens in here, that we're able to, articulate why we did what we did. Because sometimes it doesn't look very pretty on video, obviously.
Right. And it's crazy how that was generalized, where people actually would think that the why can't be expressed. And Russ, just real quick, obviously the big reports here are really the use of force reports, but obviously there's many, just in particular use of force. You always have to be able to explain why the use of force was needed. But the way the shift is going in corrections, they're looking for more of planned use of force if needed, or because they want to see if there's always efforts to de-escalate. So, and you got to show that there's failed efforts, but there are times when that use of force is immediate. And that's where that why matters the most to be put into those reports. Because right now, if you're not translating the why, the first thing they do when they look at those reports is they're going to ask you whether efforts to de-escalate. That, I'm telling you something, guys, that's the go-to word right now. Whether efforts to de-escalate.
And I was just going to say, and I hate that, because, when I look back over my career, I would say maybe 95% of the uses of force that I was involved in, there was no de-escalation possible. There wasn't even time for it to occur, because it was just, instantaneous, and the fight was on in one way or another. Sometimes it was saving another inmate. Sometimes it was saving my partner. Sometimes it was saving myself. So what am I supposed to do? There is no time. It's not appropriate. Many times it's just not appropriate.
Just reacting.
And the biggest thing right now is when they put together these use of force guidelines, they have to be wary that use of force guidelines that guide the police are not going to be the ones that they're not going to work with corrections. You got to make changes, because if not, you're going to wind up putting us in handcuffs, because we utilize force a lot more than the police officers do on a daily basis. Actually, our use of forces could sometimes be rather routine on a daily basis, just for doing escorts. Jake, a lot going on here. Jake, what's your thoughts?
I think, like you said, avoiding the why. When we're doing that, what we're trying to do is avoid the conjecture. We don't want to just throw
Nice.
stuff in there that we think this
100.
happened. This may have been their reasoning for it. That's the why that you're. All the other whys are important. That's the only why that doesn't matter. And we have like 3 different levels of reports. We have like the informational, then we'll have like disciplinary / use of force, because they're usually tied together. And then we would, if we had to take it up to a formal charge that's outside of us, outside of disciplinary within the facility, then it would be through law enforcement. So that's something that we would take those reports, we would take the video of the situation and stuff, and then we would contact law enforcement and get them involved in the investigation, because we do have a lot of times we do have batteries and stuff that our sheriff's office or police department will come down and formally charge people with those. And the body of our reports are a little different. In one respect, I agree that our use of force needs to be different. Sometimes your use of force can just be, hey, like knock that shit off. Like as you're getting there, that's about the most that's the most de-escalation you're going to be able to do, is yelling at them while you're trying to close that distance. In my book, that counts. I put in my use of force that I forward to the state. I say, yes, that officer did use verbal de-escalation, and because they were combative, they were destroying property, because they were, in the attempting to harm someone else or themselves, the officer took immediate action.
And failure to comply is also a lesser included charge sometime. If you're giving a
Yeah, of
directive
course.
and they're refusing, there you go.
And that's always good. By the way, that's a good point, John. When you start getting these charges, a lot of people may look to put the bigger charges in. They may forget to put in the failure to comply. It's like pulling someone over and forgetting to put down why you pulled them over when you go to arrest them for something bigger. A lot of guys, it was like, oh, this is what, hey guys, but what started all this? Oh, because we went to go put him in a cell and he refused. Put that in there. Because that's the charge that, minimal, it started it all, but that's the one you want to stick, because I'll guarantee you, if that initial charge of that refusal doesn't stick, it could mess the trajectory up of the subsequent stuff that happened after that. Because I chase after that. Like this is good here, guys. If I chase after a charge, it's to learn, not to win a battle. I want people to know that it's to learn, because I know we're not going to be perfect, but if I see a charge that's dropped, because again, you have different people subjectively interpreting what's written. I have seen people, we have good hearing officers that have custody background that will say, you know what, I'm a little questioned about the person's refusal, but I will tell you this. Once the officer grabbed him to put him in the cell and he started resisting, the use of force is still good. I could give 2 shits about, if they refused or not. But some people look for everything in context. And they'll look at it and say, I don't think he refused, so now I don't understand why you put your hands on him. And it's like, you know what, guys, just put everything in play. Put the refusal, put everything in play. Like Russ said, throw everything out there, but don't forget the small charges that started it all, like that refusal. That was spot on, John, because I see that happening. Go ahead, Jake. Yeah. I'm sorry, man.
Let the guys at the top, if they're going to decide what they're going to hammer them with in terms of disciplinary time, or what they're actually going to hit them, assuming it's not a criminal thing, if it's just being handled administratively, put every single last thing on there. And then suppose you're going to arbitrate the process depending on how it works in your facility, or if you're going to handle it criminally. Having a card to throw out so that you can get someone to agree to a deal, like, well, we're going to throw out this lesser included charge, or tell you what, if you agreed to the outcome of this disciplinary hearing, and I'll get rid of this one major right of failure to comply, that gives more leverage to your disciplinary hearing officer or the state's attorney, or however it turns out. It's just one more tool in their toolkit to use, and it actually happened, so you might as well report it as the truth.
Yeah, you could downgrade it too, because a lot of inmates will think that when they get something downgraded, oh, but I wasn't charged. No, you were. I got the guilty on that, but you're right. I was able to get the higher stuff. At this point, it'd be redundant. So you still got that, but having said that, I still got the main charge. And Hey, Jake, let me ask you a question because I have another layer I want to look at when it comes to report writing, but I want to finish this off first. So, as an officer, what are the basics that we want to put on our report right now? What are the simple basics before we send it up? Let's round that thought out real quick because I have another thought I want to get out.
So ours are basically set up like police reports. I'd argue they're probably better because they go through, like you said, those different tiers of the review process. It's not something that just some of the reports I get, the PC statements and stuff that come through from police reports that are from the middle of nowhere in this tiny state in the Southwest are they're worded terribly. But anyways, you want to put down, who are you? Who is this statement about? What happened? Why are you following through with the disciplinary? And then what is when you need to have a result? Like at the end, this inmate will be disciplined for whatever. Like they will follow through on this or that. You need to have in it, and that goes for the same types of reports. If it's something that you're reporting for medical, you want to say who you are, who the inmates and whoever's involved, what happened, and then how you followed up on it. You can't just leave a report dangling. You have to have a result that it was handed off to either there was a disciplinary action for it. If there wasn't, you reported it to your superior and they said, just write this report for informational purposes, or you need to have, okay, this was a medical issue that happened and this is it was brought to medical's attention and he was seen and the end result is that he's back in the pod or whatever. You need to have the result from your reports from start to finish. You don't need to add a whole lot of extra things in there that aren't you're not telling a big crazy story. You need to include all the pertinent parts, all the charges and stuff, all the non-compliance if it's a disciplinary report. But we don't need to know what they were eating for breakfast. We don't need to know all the profanities they use necessarily unless it's pertinent to a threat or something like that.
Yeah, and you made a good point. Obviously, we focused a lot on the charges because we went right into custody mode, but obviously reports can be written for many reasons. But I think, really having a discussion based on the charges shows us how important these reports are. Now, again, we basically said just the facts pretty much. On the report itself, you're going to basically note why you did what you did. So that's the added part that, maybe a lot of people don't realize that there is a why that you add. It's the why in regards to why you did something and even how you felt, because most of the time when people use force, I think it's great when they justify how they feel. Russ may not see somebody as a threat, but I could, and then people would have to say, hey guys, that's how I felt. So if you want to take it to court, let's take it to court. But no, that's how I felt. Now, granted, again.
Feelings matter a lot. Like when you said, like, I feel threatened or I was worried I was in danger, or like I said, it's the totality of the circumstances. If you feel threatened or if you're worried that someone else may be in danger, that's huge. But going back to what Jake was saying with all these extraneous details in there, sometimes you can read a report and you could tell the officer is pissed off. You could tell that he's mad about what the inmate said, particularly when he's putting in that extra verbiage of that the swear words and things that he was used. I've read many reports where the officers say he called me this, and you could tell that it really got under his skin. And you're looking at that officer and you're talking to that officer, and you could tell that he's really bothered. As a human being, you're entitled to your feelings, but just remember, as a professional, like I said, what goes with that report, you've got to be committed to that. So if you're still angry about what the inmate did to get under your skin or bother you, you need to take a little decompression time before you write that, because your emotions will show in the report.
And that's spot on. And that's why actually is the next part of the dialogue. So when Jake started mentioning that, one of the things I wanted to talk about is what do we look at when we're reviewing the reports? And I'm talking about the initial eyes on site, and then we could travel it up. So for me, when I was a sergeant, and I'll cover one area, maybe we all could think of different areas, but when I would get the collection of the reports, I did want some people helping each other proofread, but I didn't want them changing the integrity of the report. And I made it known that way. I said, guys, we're here to help each other. Make sure that the thoughts are clear, but you're not going to change people's thoughts. So, we could work together, but I don't want to influence us in writing what happened. But like if someone may come up to me and say, hey, Gangi, before I give this to my sergeant, does this sound right? Oh, that reads right. Or, hey, I'm sorry, I don't understand what this means. You may want to rewrite that. But having said that, and that's fine. We do that to make sure, like John said too, we're not writing in the heat of the moment. We're not writing based on emotion, because when we're writing based on emotion, we're not thinking clearly. So when we get all the reports, the first thing I would do as a sergeant, because I know I'm the initial eyes. And let's be honest here right now, guys, and this is all true. When we pass paperwork up and we sign off it at each level, we look at the person that's given us the paperwork more than we actually look at the paperwork sometimes. And I know, like, if Russ gave me some paperwork, okay, well, don't get me wrong, I'm still going to look at it. But if the day is rocking, hey, thanks, Russ. I know you have my back, blah, blah, blah. Maybe I'll get to it later. But I know I'm in pretty good hands, because Russ, doesn't mean I don't look at it when I can. But if I got to get something moving, I may trust. And this is just the human way of things. Is it the right thing? It's not the right thing. But you could be working in an area where there's tons of things happening at once, and, priorities are shifting. And this code happened 2 hours ago. I got another code happening, and Russ is coming up with the packet from the code from 2 hours ago. But now we're dealing with the current code. And thank God it's Russ today, man. Thank God it's Russ. Is it wrong? It's not right. But do we do it? We do it, and that's kind of where we wind up getting blindsided. So going back to what the right thing is, the first thing I do is I get all the reports. If I'm the sergeant, I'll get all the reports sent to me before I write my own, right? Because I am going to write my own. But I want to make sure, this will be the first tip I give. I won't give everything I do, because I want everybody to provide something. But the first thing I do is I look at all the operation reports to see if all the proper charges were written. Because sometimes people will put stuff into a report and not realize that there should have been a charge there, or there should have been something that should have been done. So even in general, so if there's not a charge, but did we have resolution? Because that's the key. The last thing I want is sending up reports where we note an incident and we don't have resolution. I need to make sure that we are on point. So with that said, I guess I look for two things. And if there's not a resolution, my report is going to explain why. So in this case here, my first thing, we're writing up an incident and we're going to charge some inmates. I want to make sure that I don't miss anything. I've had incidences where, an inmate gets very disruptive with staff, and the officer may write them up for the inmate being disruptive. And so the inmate's being disruptive all day, but they write down in the report, the inmate was acting wild, banging on his cell door, and doing a lot of crazy, behaviors. And then the very last sentence is, and then he made some bogus threat, he's going to see me on the street. So I'm going to write him up for, being disruptive, and say, well, hold on, wait a second, you missed the last line. So go back and give him the threat. You just want to make sure that everything's in line. And as I said, for the other avenue, I want to make sure that the reports that are written don't put us in a greater case of liability. So what I mean is, we didn't put a problem out there that should have been solved at the most immediate of levels. Like I get it. There's some problems that I'm going to try my best, and when I see the reports, we're going to write all our exhausted efforts to try to solve it. But at that point, if I can't, the reports are being written to forward the concern up with every effort to try to resolve it. But the last thing I want are for those reports to come back my way saying, yo, are you kidding me? There was no effort here to resolve anything. And that, to me, is one of the most embarrassing things. So I do cross my T's, and then when I sign off on it, when I give it to my shift commander, they can trust to some extent that I've done everything I was supposed to do at my level to, solve whatever the issue is and make sure I'm giving them the paperwork that they need. So technically, when they look at it, they really only have to look at mine. That's the key, the sergeants. But what's your thoughts, Russ? You're looking at the paper initially.
Well, the first thing that I want to do, and especially if it's me writing it, and there's been a use of force, the first thing that I want to do besides all of that is I want to go back and I want to bolster, everything that was done with regards to the use of force, using the lens of what policy and procedure tells you. So like with CDCR, we could use force to stop an attacker. We could use force to force compliance with a lawful order, having that whole idea about a legitimate penological interest and all that in there, not just any order, not pick up that piece of trash or I'm going to use force on you, but hey, stop and I'm going to search you. And then, yes, you can use force, in a situation like that. So the compliance with a lawful order, to effect custody, to stop an escape, and then go back and take the lens of all that and look, okay, so make sure I put into my report the justification for the use of force with the big, broad overall. Okay, yeah, I was stopping an escape and attempted to run from me. When I stopped him on the outside, maybe he was part of a trash pickup crew or whatever. And so, yeah, can you use force then? Absolutely. And then go forward from there using the same terminology that's in policy, procedure, state law, and case law, and make the case for you having acted within the scope of your duties. That make sense?
No, it does. And can I add something on that? When you're explaining use of force, obviously, in the operations report, there could be, as you're doing a force professionally controlled, but you're caught up in the moment. Some people will stick to, I hit the guy 3 times, and it turns out I usually generalize that out, and they say, hey, I believe, or I recall, whatever, but you don't want to stick to, I hit the guy only 3 times, and they show, well, you hit the guy 6 times. There's some human error in recalling the actual moment, because you're so, it's emotional. So, I mean, and also with that's another thing, guys, with the amount of time that those reports are due, you're still writing on those emotions, like John said. So a lot of it could be clouded in what you're writing on the report that could wind up being utilized against you. So I've seen people that write the report that when it gets to the heat of the moment, so not in regards to why they did something, but when it comes to something about when they're using the force in the moment, I have seen people protect themselves saying that, and I believe when I taken the guy down, I did try to gain compliance by using my baton to hit his thigh. I believe I hit his thigh 3 times, blah, 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 because sometimes they do ask for those specifics. But having said that, you got to be wary because you're in the heat of the motion, heat of the moment, that, 3 times turned out to be 8. And then what happens is you get a lawyer that, I mean, I don't know, do some states, well, I'll go with you, Russ, first, and John, but do your officers, will they write in the report how many times they may have hit an inmate to gain compliance?
Yeah, you should. Here's the thing, though, is danger and adrenaline dumps and things like that change our perspective. And I've had my perspective, wildly shifted in some circumstances where the video clearly showed something else. And that was not about me covering up. That was just about, the situation, being so tense and so, fraught with danger that you don't perceive or see every single thing that happens. It's not possible. And the human condition is one that, just tends to distort the actual facts. And people should be aware of that. As a matter of fact, I've been meaning to, possibly do a video actually on that, because the whole process, actually fascinates me about the things that we perceive and the things that simply aren't true in a stress-filled environment. So you always want to branch out and, try and approximate the best that you can. This is also why, and I know that some people don't like this and don't believe in it. I also believe that if you've used force, that you should always have the opportunity to view the video, and use it, because it may fill in some of those gaps. I had a low level, know nothing use of force with a guy that threatened me and then threatened to assault an inmate that was on the yard with me. And I put him into cuffs really quick, and he spun and tried to turn away. And I just reached down and caught the cuffs in my elbow and, ass over tea kettle. And it was no big deal. I mean, it was like the lowest level use of force that I've ever had. And when I wrote it, I went back and looked at the film, And I had convinced myself that I had turned counterclockwise, and I had actually turned clockwise completely around before I did my little move on it. It looked good on video, though. I just want to say that. And I was just like, wow, if I had written this and this had been something big and the inmate had got hurt, or something like that, I could look like I was, trying to, do something underhanded. And it's just sometimes our perceptions get distorted. But I hope that makes sense.
No, it does, Russ. And I want to mention something. We got to have a dialogue on that, and we could we'll explore both roles, because I'm on the fence with that as well, because I believe that if you have good investigators that have worked the profession, they understand what it's like to kind of, rumble with somebody, and then basically how certain things could get lost in the mix. I've seen it happen. I've worked with good investigators that say, hey, I'm not chasing the guy because he wrote 3 and he threw 5. I mean, obviously he's rumbling with the inmate. So I think it really depends on, one, the experience of the investigative division, or the people that are looking at it, to make sure they understand what they're looking at. And again, if you have people that are chasing after, well, he threw 5 and, he only wrote 2. Okay, let's not use that to minimize why it happened. So a lot of the investigators will maybe go back and say, okay, we'll worry about that later, but let's talk about why this incident happened to begin with. Because if you got the guy still resisting, the use of force is good until the guy's not resisting. I mean, that's it. And then when you have the only concern I have with reviewing the video beforehand is just more of the due process concerns. Because then what happens here is that if you do have something that could be criminal, the biggest concern here is that people could look at the video and create a different narrative. And that could mess with the integrity of the investigation. But I do understand when you need to seek clarity as to what you did. But again, I think that here's where I see it come into play, though, Russ, because I agree with you on this, is that if there's a concern, and, they say they see something that you didn't admit to do, and that's really totally off course, you at that point, you get, the union, the lawyers, you're going to get to see the video anyway and justify. But so far, in my experience, I haven't seen, like, if you're off by 1 or 2 hits, I haven't seen people chase after. As long as you're in the moment and it makes sense, the guy's not restrained, he's actively resisting, he's still a threat to you. No one's chasing the fact that you said 3 and you hit him 5 times. Their concern is always going to be the hits that happen after the guy's in control, and that's when the counts to me matter. Because at that point here, did you know that he was subdued for at least 10 seconds when you hit him? Because, I mean, you may even, accidentally, you may get one why he's already subdued right at the moment he's subdued. But they usually look at the punches or the hits that happen after the guy is clearly no longer a threat. So I think that's a great discussion that we could have, Russ, because I understand that perspective of wanting to see the video as well. I think that would be fun. It's not a win-loss here or right-wrong. But, hey, what's your thoughts on this, Sean? A lot of stuff going on here when you're looking at that review and that the reports.
I was gonna ask if you guys out there were able to review footage before a major incident or a use of force. I think that you should be able to review that footage, because the footage it's a report that's already written, and you need to remind yourself while you were in the heat of battle what was going on. And Russ is talking about the number of blows or the number of ways that you turn, but those, and like you said, I don't think most people will quibble with you if you get the number wrong, although you do want to generally be right. Sometimes you can be in a gray situation. For example, I came across a cell once, and 2 guys were kicking the shit out of a guy in the middle. It's what I call a fight sandwich. You had 2 guys, and they were very much going to kill him, which was my sincere belief. I had no help nearby, called for a code. I called the first guy out of the cell, pulled him out. I pulled him out by his throat and threw him up against the wall. Now, this is very expressly forbidden by our rules, to be taking inmates into custody by the throat. I believed at the time that the only way to save the inmate from grievous harm or death was to behave in this function. So when does he become subdued? He was no longer fighting with me, but the fight continued inside the cell of the other inmate and the inmate who was getting beaten up. And the video also showed an officer approaching my location, seeing what was happening, getting scared and running the other direction. So sometimes you get into a gray area where you have to be able to recall what happened, and you have to really be able to justify. So this was outside of our policy. This was outside of our procedure, and it's a bad look. And like what Russ said, a lot of times use of forces, I would say most of the time, they do not look good, particularly to a jury. So if you're in a position like that, you have got to see the footage. You've got to be able to see what might be used against you and be ready to say, in this situation, I felt if I did not behave in this way, that someone could die. And you have to be able to ready to defend you. And you know what, right or wrong, your actions, at least you have to be able to articulate what was going through your mind at that time to give yourself the best defense that you possibly can. And being more reasonable when it comes to reports, you're falling into gray areas all the time. For example, again, with the use of force where you have assaultive behavior already taking place, the footage, the reports from other people are going to clearly define who was in what role and when and why and who was responsible. But as a sergeant, sometimes when you're getting officers together and you're doing a write-up and you're deciding what the charge is, before this goes off to the next step administratively, your disciplinary hearing officer, or if it's going to be referred out to the state's attorney's office, you've got to be the first person that says, I was reasonable. Sometimes this meant that my officers would all call me on the phone and say, like, hey, what's the maximum thing that we're hitting with? Are we getting in with this, that, and the other thing? And sometimes it's a gray line. For example, one time I was out in the rec yard and I had an inmate failure to comply with the directive. This inmate particularly did not like me. He blamed me for the violation of parole and various other things going on with him, and he and I had a confrontation. So when was the line crossed between conduct which disrupts and failure to comply, which are things we can handle administratively? And when did we cross the line between when he starts talking to other inmates there and recruiting them to his cause? When do we cross the line into inciting a riot? He was eventually charged with inciting a riot based on my report. I never used the diction inciting a riot because I didn't believe that it necessarily called for that. But when I went through my report and I read through it and I saw that what was actually playing out there in the showdown was inciting a riot. So things sometimes can be in a gray area, or they can be worse than as a sergeant or as an officer.
Yeah, what's great about that, I like that a lot too, because what's great about that is, you have, again, if you have someone overseeing those reports, and in your case, obviously you caught it yourself, but that's something that I would expect a supervisor, when they hand the report, to catch that, believe it or not, because it's not to the point where you're paranoid, but it's probable. I mean, you know what? Let's just do that. I mean, sometimes when you write something, the charges are surface, but then there's the stuff that's more probable that I also think should be written. I'm not saying to the point where you're paranoid, but something like that. Why not? We don't know what he was doing. And obviously the guy could have some pull. So now, granted, if you think about in the long run, you have another incident with this guy and there's 20 inmates there. You could have separated them the last incident, because someone's always going to look at that and say, hey, didn't they write down that he got a simple charge for whatever it was that actually should have been something higher at that moment. We've done that. I've done it where if you feel that you need that higher level support and it's not, and God forbid something happens later where that higher level supported charge would have helped us out, that downgrade is going to get tossed back into that liability center when you got custody coming in or the union coming in saying this is what happened, our charge is being dropped and this should have been supported last time, and because it wasn't, this is what happened. So it's good to catch those things and make the effort to try to connect the dots on the stuff that's not so surface. What's your thoughts on this, Jake?
Well, and that's part of my process. When I'm looking into an instance, I have the benefit of looking at the camera, usually multiple camera views. And so that's something that I'll do. And then I even get the inmate's perspective. I'll talk to them, anybody that was involved, and sometimes a few that weren't directly involved, to get their perspective on this, because I'd like to get ahead of, what their complaint is going to be. Now, this goes from, depending on the night, what is the worst incident to the least, critical incident that, like taking somebody stealing somebody's commissary or something, taking a bite of it, or because they were sharing or something, is not as bad as a use of force. But at some point I will be there when they're delivering the reports and stuff too. But I tell them all the time, I'm like, the camera is the impartial witness. Like John said, the camera already did its report. It's going to show what went on. So I want to see from the officer's aspect and from the inmates whose story most closely resembles what the camera showed me, to try to be that balanced in between person in deciding how to adjudicate a situation. So I have that ability because I have a smaller facility, and there's only one level above me where things are going to be reviewed. So I need to make sure that I have, all my T's crossed and my I's dotted. But that's something that I do regularly, is look at those things and bring that in. And if there's something that is like Russ said, if there's something that an officer didn't notice, I will show them for basically like training purposes, be like, look at this point here. You're looking at this, you're addressing this part of the situation. Look what's happening behind you with somebody else, or what could have happened here. And show them the incident after they've done their reports and stuff, so that they understand. And if there's something that's completely way off in left field in the report that doesn't match, I will address that with them and be like, hey, this is not what the camera is showing me. This is not what the other officers that were there told me, or this is not what occurred.
Yeah, and you know what's spot on about all this too, guys, is that from the administrative level, when I look down, I know I'm not going to get perfection, and I don't expect perfection, but I do expect consistency, if that makes sense. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I do need consistency, because if I don't, there's conflicts, and I tend to get somewhat a bit more frustrated if the inconsistency is at the lowest of levels, because at that point there's enough fail safes for me that should have been in place to prevent that report from even being written, if it really just didn't make sense, unless there is a concern. But I will tell you one thing: if there is a consistency, then we should be getting an inconsistency like that strictly shifts the narrative. We need to be called on that. So we need, as administration, we need to walk in knowing that something happened here, because we're getting two sides of a different story here. And that's not something that you want to have discovered at the morning meeting on Monday morning. That inconsistency at that lowest level that has the potential to shift the narrative should be discovered at some point at the more immediate levels. Because if it does come up to our level, then we're looking at the inconsistency among the highest levels of supervisors. Because I would want the supervisors to come tell me, hey, listen, we had a code the other night. I got a bunch of reports, but I got two officers that are stating things in conflict, just to give you the heads up. Okay, not a problem. Now we're on alert, so that when we go back to work, we're looking at body cameras, we're looking at, specific reports, because we are only as good as the information we get. Now, what gets me upset is when those things are discovered at the meeting, especially at the lowest of levels. So the concern of conflict is at the lowest of levels. One, it's like we have all these fail safes, as I mentioned, to discover that. But then two, it makes you wonder what else you're not being told on other incidences. So if no one's telling me this on this one, then I could just imagine the ones that are getting past us. And just in case at the highest levels, sometimes we would like to sit back and rest on our fail safes, but you can't. Because, literally, you got to make sure you have the right people in play that you could trust, that are going to look at each of those reports in scrutiny, because even I said, sometimes I look at the person and it's, oh, I know it's Russ, and it's still the wrong thing to do, but you're getting hit up with so many things that, and those are the things that could slip. One day, Russ could have a bad day. Russ could 100% have a bad day, but if we're having a dialogue like this, let's be honest. We know that happens. Russ,
over a career, I could have lots of bad days.
Well, yeah, so you get like someone like,
and that's not easy for a guy like me to admit.
No, you're the Chuck Norris of corrections, but it's true though, Russ. It's true, because when we get busy with our day, it's human nature to look for convenience, to not get something piled on. And when you're going from code to code to code, and you're starting to move over the code from 2 hours ago. Sure, I got the reports and stuff, but I'm already over here now. So when you come back, I may look at you and I'm overwhelmed. I may say, well, I got it from Russ. Or, oh shit, I got it from Jake. Damn it. But I am trusting Russ is going to alleviate the road, because he's never failed me before. But, still my job, though. It's still my job to see some of those things.
That happens just as a correctional officer. That's your whole mentality, though, is deciding where you're going to put your energy, right? You could chase down every last little rule violation and every single inmate all over the facility, but you've got to realize that your energy and your efforts are best expended in certain areas, whether that's dealing with problematic inmates or whether you have processes that aren't working or inmates that are problems, or let's face it, gang, officers that you can't necessarily trust. And so when you get enough information, you develop a shortcut. You say, Russ is good at writing reports. I trust Russ to take care of incidents, and I have all this other stuff to worry about. It's just you being a correctional officer as you do your reports. You're just spending your energy where you know you should. And sometimes it works great, and it just isn't when it doesn't work out. But that's life, right?
Yeah, but you know what's spot on about that, because it's really speaking the truth. Like, having said that, our job, we're filtered. By the time we get the information, it's filtered, and we're really looking at the person who's giving the information right before. So I get it. Russ comes in, I'm only really looking at Russ's report. Only barely ever, if there's a concern and it comes passed down, then they could say, hey, listen, guys, there's a whole mess of shit here, and you're going to require a deeper look. And we've had that happen. You get a phone call coming back and saying, hey, you sent this stuff up. Have you guys really looked at all the reports? Because we're sending them back your way. So sometimes there is a level of forgiveness there where they know, hey, we're going to send these back your way. We need you to read through these again. And then it's like, okay, guys, stop everything we're doing. And then you just set up the table and you put everything out there and you look at everything. And they may not even tell you what you need to look for. They're trusting that you're going to be able to be in that position and figure that out. And if you don't and you can't find nothing, I've had that happen to me, where, what are they looking for? And they got me on something that was just a perspective that I would have never thought of because it was from an outside person looking in. But was the perspective right? It actually was. But it's just not something that I would look for because, again, I'm on the inside, but people from the outside, all they got to do is ask one unique question. What do you got?
It was always tough for me because I always thought I was just damn good at writing reports. I loved writing reports. I don't know why. It was just something that I excelled at. It was a point of pride for me, I guess. So when a report got kicked back to me, I always took it personal. And you can't do that when you're getting a report kicked back to you. It's because there's a problem. It's because we need to solve this. Like, it's all about just getting the mission done. It's not because someone doesn't like the story you're told. So I guess if there's anyone out there that's like me that likes writing reports, just don't take it personal when it lands back on your desk.
Yeah, there's Russ. Yeah, again, guys, it's not a win-loss. At the end of the day, it's more of an effort to get clarity. And mind you, guys, you can amend a report, but you cannot change its integrity.
I think from looking it on down, it's beyond just like I said, the straight grammar and stuff. I'm trying to get the whole truth of the matter, looking at everybody's perspective. And I know that the people that are going to be reviewing it in our case are going to be, state level employees and stuff that are going to be very critical and have an outside look. So that's why, I hope the officers don't feel downtrodden when I tell them, hey, we have to take this out of the report. That was really clever, your use of words here, but they don't like this word. They don't like that word. So we need to be a little bit more judicial on how we put things down. But that's very careful with the wording, making sure that everything in there is complete. And like I said, I try to get multiple perspectives on each case so that I don't have as much kickback to me or questions from outside sources, because hopefully it's a reasonable and fair reports that reflect what happened, and any reasonable person looking at it, any jury or any person that has to investigate a situation is going to look at it and say, they did the best they could to accurately depict what happened.
And that's the goal, to be honest with you, is to provide some type of universal clarity where, not only can you see the picture from the inside, but you also can see the picture from the outside. Hey, would Jake a closing thought, Jake?
So, yeah, my closing thoughts, I think with officers and stuff getting in with this, with the reports, just try to be reasonable in it. There's going to be a lot of missteps and stuff in it. There's a lot of good tips here from a lot of years of experience. But I hope the officers that are getting into this and that are able to take the criticism, you have to be self-motivated to do this job. You have to be able to take it on the chin and keep moving if you're going to have a career in corrections. And these are just some simple pointers, some simple basic steps from a bunch of different perspectives. You have people here from juvenile, from adult, from California, from the Southwest. So hopefully the listeners here just take a little bit from everyone's experience, and then ultimately whatever you're going to do in your career, whatever you're going to write down and sign your name to, you're going to have to own that. So take these things into consideration and do the damn thing, do the job, and make sure that you are looking at the people to the left and right of you that are helping you write these reports, and to make sure that things are correctly documented.
I love that, Jake, because the reports are not just a direct reflection of your professionalism and your credibility, but also of the agencies. And what's your thoughts, John, closing?
I'm going to challenge you out there that if you're a fantastic correctional officer and you love doing your job and you're going to be doing this for a while, but you're not exactly John Grisham, and it shows in your reports, maybe you need to take some time aside for yourself and work in that aspect, right? How often do correctional officers go to the gym and lift because they want to be able to handle themselves in a fight? How often are they reading leadership books because they want to become better leaders? If you know that one of your areas of frailty as a correctional officer is representing yourself well on paper, there's courses you could take. There's online stuff you can do. There's ways that you can go that you can work on your English composition. Read other people's reports. Just be engaged in that process. Don't throw up your hands and say, well, I'm terrible at writing reports and I'm going to need someone to put training wheels on my career for the rest of the time that I'm here writing reports. You can improve on anything, even areas of weakness. And like I said, there's guys at the gym that are working on that. Then maybe you need to work out doing your reports because they really matter in your career.
I love that. That's true. That's something that we should focus on more, right? Working out on our writings. And I think every facility has a good writer. I do. I've seen actually supervisors go to their officers sometimes to say, hey, how does this sound? As long as it's not something confidential. Hey, what's your thoughts, Russ, closing?
So, yeah, being a good correctional officer is about being able to place yourself in really uncomfortable situations and being able to take it from uncomfortable to resolved and safe. And it's no different with the writing part of it. I've seen officers that, they are so concerned about the report writing aspect of it that they're not willing to put themselves into those uncomfortable positions. And that kind of stunts their growth. So what I would say is, really get into it, read all the reports you can read, put yourself into positions where you have to write a report for some reason or another. It doesn't have to be a use of force. It can just be, a charge or a policy and procedure change. And the more the change, and the more that you do that, the more comfortable you become. When you become comfortable about writing reports, that will be the last thing that you have to think about when things are starting to go sour, and then you'll be able to come back to it and go, hey, I already have this. I already know what's going on, and be able to really sparkle and shine, and it will serve you well in the future part of your career with regards to promotions and so forth. So you're not going to be able to get very far without being able to do that one specific thing.
Yeah, and guys, I think that's spot on too, Russ. My only closing thought would here is, we expect honesty in our reports. I mean, the big thing here is that if there's any crack or inconsistency, the investigative division will have to look at those things, or administratively, because that's where the liability is. They're not chasing after someone being right or wrong. They're chasing after liability. So the smallest of cracks becomes this window of light that has to be resolved. They have to figure out, I can't believe you're coming at me for this small thing, because it's going to become a freaking the sun by the time it travels up so many layers, because that's the one thing people look to target. Remember, when you have people that do something wrong and they can't kind of defend that, they attack the due processes or they attack credibility. Listen, when people are right, they defend their innocence. When people are wrong, they challenge other people's credibility or due process. So, I mean, if we're doing something right, the department, we're good. But if we're doing something wrong, and sometimes even if we're doing something right and there's an inconsistency, take the time out and clarify that, because we're going to need it later on to defend our position. So just in case we do go to court, we're not paying people out money when it's like, well, you know what? This is just becoming a conflict because of what this person wrote. It's like, yeah, but that person was wrong. It doesn't matter. The inmate's going to win because of this inconsistency that was not discovered through all these levels. And one last thing, I think people know that too. I think people expect these inconsistencies to kind of be panned out by the time it gets to the top level. And if it's not, and it makes it to the court looking that way, then we should take the loss. Just is what it is. I'm sorry, guys. Then we should take the loss.
No, I agree. That's just one more dimension of your professionalism. Everything we do as correctional officers, we try to do it well. Well, don't fall flat when it comes to this, because you're trying to see your work through to the end, right? If it goes to a court process, you want to see that your work is for something. So do every aspect of it correctly. That's all.
I love it. No, when I say sorry, guys, it's more in general.
Well-rounded.
Yeah, I like how John. No, wait, no, Gangi, I agree. It's like, no, I just meant I'm sorry in general. But as always, guys, love you guys. Stay safe. You get a chance, subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify every time I post a video. Stay safe.